Well, Razorback fans, we know that there's still a lot going on with John Calipari, and his first season as the Razorback head coach hasn't really gone according to plan, but a lot of games left, hopefully a lot of time left for Cal and the experiment at Arkansas. Well, let's talk more about it right now as we go ahead and welcome in a very special guest and a good friend who knows a little bit about the game of basketball, especially the Razorback basketball program. Of course, it is Aaron Torres of the Aaron Torres podcast. And AT, it's been a long time, man. How you been?
It has been a long time. Listen, I feel bad about everything going on. Obviously, most notably the injury earlier this week. I'm bummed. I'm sad. I'm disappointed. I know everybody listening is. So I'm not trying to say that I feel your pain, but I feel your pain, man, because I was as excited about anybody for this season, and it goes without saying, certainly has not gone as I expected. Certainly, let alone anybody else that's obviously listening to us today.
So let's just start there, and we'll get into some specifics. But how has this gone so poorly? I mean, we can talk about a lot of different things, but in your mind, it's one thing to struggle, but it's one thing to just be awful. And this team being just as awful as they've been, why is that? Like, what went wrong for Cal in year one at Arkansas?
Well, listen, I'm as surprised as anybody because when the roster got put together in the spring, I liked the pieces. Now, you thought shooting could be a little bit of an issue, but Nelly Davis had obviously shot the ball really well. I thought DJ last year, it was more injury than his incapability of shooting, and plus he's a freshman in the SEC. And so I liked the roster comp. I mean, you could pick apart any roster that gets put together in April and May, but I like the composition. I think to me, it feels obvious. And I think what I keep saying on my show, it's two things together, but people only focus on one of them. Okay. So the 3-point shooting has not been good. You don't need me to tell you, blah, blah, blah. I mean, especially in league play, it has not been good. What I think maybe an Arkansas fan realizes, but I don't think maybe if you don't watch the team day to day, game to game, realizes they're also a really bad rebounding team. And you don't have to be John Wooden or Coach K to know that when you miss a lot of shots and you don't get a lot of rebounds, it really leaves you kind of no margin for error. And the example I keep using, like Texas A&M this year, they're not a perfect team by any stretch. I think they're a fine middle of the pack, big SEC team, but Buzz Williams knew when he was putting that roster together, hey, we're not going to be a great 3-point shooting team, so we have to be a great rebounding team to get second, third, fourth opportunities and take advantage of things that way. I think on paper that was the intention with Arkansas is, hey, if there's shooting deficiencies, we'll still have Jonas Adu, we'll have Adu Thiero. I still keep calling him Thiero. We'll have Adu Thiero, we'll have Trevin Brazil, but it hasn't equated. And, listen, obviously the Missouri game was probably something resembling a low point. But I mean, those other games, I just go back to that Florida game where it's like they just couldn't get they couldn't get a stop and then a rebound. Like they could get the stop, but then they couldn't get the rebound, or they would get a score, but then they could. And the rebounding with the bad shooting to me has been the key. I don't have the stats in front of me as of today, but the last time I looked it up, something like 280th in second chance points, rebounding, etc. Obviously, that's weighted a lot towards the smaller schools in the sport, towards the bottom. So they're towards the bottom in the power conferences and especially the SEC of second chance points and rebounding. And I think that coupled with the shooting is, in my opinion, the two reasons combined why the struggles have been the way that they are.
And I think it's weird for our Arkansas fans to kind of go through because of the expectation that came along with it. And again, it goes back to if you're a team that's on the bubble, or if you're a team that's sitting at 3-2 right now, or 2-3 even, you're not pumped up. Maybe it's not going as good as what you thought, but you can at least say, hey, SEC's really good. Just get to the tournament. That's all that matters. But I don't think anybody would have guessed in a million years, even the most vengeful Kentucky fans would have guessed that Arkansas would be missing the NCAA tournament. But that's the type of team that they are right now. They're a team that is set to miss the NCAA tournament. So knowing that with Cal and the expectation that he's a Hall of Fame coach. He's accomplished everything that you could possibly accomplish. But does this impact his legacy? Does this impact at all the way that he's viewed when it comes to the success that he's had, not just at Arkansas, but everywhere? Because he is amazing, and he's had some down years, but for this to be the first one at a major school like Arkansas with all the expectations, Does it hurt his legacy as a coach?
I think the legacy is still being written. I mean, unless you believe that this will be his last year coaching. And listen, I said something on my show that certain Arkansas outlets perceived as me saying that he should step down. I just said he looks miserable. And I said at 65 years old with probably 30 or 40 million in the bank, if you're miserable, I don't know why you want to keep doing this. So I didn't say that he should retire or he is retiring, but to answer your question directly, I think, listen, everybody's going to have a bad year or two. Doesn't matter who you are. I mean, listen, I'm a UConn alum. UConn's they're going to make the tournament, but you watch them, they're not playing very good right now. So everybody has down years and bad years. I think the only way that this impacts him is if he either A, just retires after this year, which I don't think is going to happen at all, or if he never gets it going in Arkansas. Now, if you want to be glasses half full, it's certainly not going well this year. But as long as you have John Calipari as your head coach, you're always going to have a shot, and you're always going to have a roster that's at the very least very talented. And even like I was talking to somebody. I'll just say it. I was talking to somebody pretty close to Darius Acuff the other day, the 5-star who's coming to Arkansas next year. And he told me, hey, look, man, this kid's been wanting to play for Cal since as long as he's been watching basketball. And so I think it's easy to forget now, but in these moments, there are always going to want to be players that want to play for John Calipari. And as long as John Calipari is coaching, he is going to have a very talented roster. Now, does that equate to wins? Clearly not necessarily, because we see what's happening right now this season. But I don't think that just because this team is headed in the wrong direction, there isn't a lot of reason for hope. It doesn't mean that a year from now it could be completely different and you're sitting at 4-1 after 5 SEC games or whatever, because there's always going to be the talent. And so it's early for me to say that the legacy is going to be tarnished or anything like that, because I don't believe that the legacy will be, or I don't believe the Arkansas chapter of his career is going to be completely written after this year.
Speaking with Aaron Torres of the Aaron Torres podcast here on Inside Arkansas Live. So, AT, the thing about Cal that I've heard from just nothing but Kentucky fans like crazy, and even some other people, is that, he's lost his fastball. He's not actually a good coach. He's not actually good X's and O's. He's just a guy who always had the most talent or the most athletic team and just kind of roll the ball out there and see what happened. He hires a bunch of yes men around him as assistant coaches. That's been one of the criticisms that's been thrown a lot towards Razorback fans and people who support Cal. But when you look at him as that type of coach, because Arkansas had Eric Musselman, who a lot of people still love. I still love Muss. You love Muss. We all love Muss. And he was a really good X's and O's coach, having them ready at the right times, prepping, all of that. But do you think that there's some truth to that with Cal, of maybe he's just not as good of an X's and O's coach, or going up against some of these other really great coaches in the SEC and being able to outcoach them? It's more just about the roster and the talent that he has surrounding him.
What I do think is fair is that the SEC is way better than it has ever been at any point in the history of the sport, really, this league. And so I think what it's a byproduct of is, like, I do think that he was the guy that was building a roster from scratch every spring before it was cool and trendy to do so, is I think that, in 2013, 2017, and I'm just using those as hypothetical seasons, you could be far from a finished product and still start 4-1 in SEC play, start 5-0 in SEC play, because the teams and the coaching and the resources and the players just weren't as good. I mean, look at this year, John, look at this year, right? Just look at the 5 games to start SEC play where Arkansas started 0-5. You have Tennessee was number 1 in the country when that game was played. They've struggled a little bit, whatever. They were number 1 in the country. Ole Miss, you're sitting there when they play Arkansas. They're a fringe top 25 team, and how good are they really? Yeah, they're pretty freaking good, because 2 games later they go to Alabama and beat Alabama. Florida was a team that I thought they were fine coming into. I thought they were fine even in SEC play. I was like, what are they, like the 6th best team? No. That's a real team that I think could realistically go to the Final Four. So those were just your first 3 SEC games. Obviously, the LSU game, that to me was the turning point. That was the one you had to win. You did not find a way. No excuses, whatever, even though there was that weird Trevin Brazil flagrant. But that's another conversation for another day. We're not going to get into that. And then the most recent game, the Missouri game. I know Missouri just lost to Texas. Missouri's a really good team. Dennis Gates is a really good coach. And I know last year they weren't good, but they're really good this year, I promise you. And so, again, what I do believe is that, listen, I don't believe that schematically he's ever been the greatest coach that's ever walked the face of the earth, but most guys aren't. You talk to other coaches, like Coach K wasn't the greatest schematic coach, but he recruited well. He knew how to motivate. He knew how to put players in position to succeed, whatever. Pretty much any coach you could make that argument about in the history of basketball, okay? And so what I do believe is I do believe the SEC is way tougher than it's ever been. It's not an excuse for the start that they had when they were fully healthy before the most recent injury, but the SEC is tougher than it's ever been. And I do think with the staff, I'd like to see maybe some younger juice to it. I know I can't speak to what goes on behind the scenes. And I will say I was an advocate of hiring Kenny Payne. Kentucky fans will tell you otherwise, but when Kentucky fans struggled over the last couple of years, they said part of it was the loss of Kenny Payne. So you can't, do that and then now say that he's the worst coach that's ever walked the face of the earth. So, Kenny Payne, okay, I understand it. Chin Coleman was with him. Okay, I understand it. But now, you're talking about, 3, 4, 5 coaches that are all in their 50s, 60s, whatever, kind of towards the tail end of their careers. And it's like, I don't know how to say this, but like it's the cliche thing to say, but I think it's true. Where are the new ideas? Where is the new this? Where's the new that? You look at, as an example, somebody like Nate Oates, Nate Oates over the offseason was struggling with the defensive side of the court and went to the NBA, brought somebody that he had no relationship with because he thought he was the best man for the job. So I'm not going to sit here and say that this coach needs to be fired and he needs to be replaced with this guy. But I do think, listen, it's a lot of guys that have been around Cal for a while. I think that has some benefits, but I also think it has its drawbacks. Can you get younger guys, but then also are you going to listen to them and are you going to empower them to do what they need to do? Those would be the questions if there was a staff shakeup in the offseason. I think some of that is justified, but I also think, again, some of it is just the SEC is really, 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 really freaking good, man.
Well, AT, another thing that I feel like we're just talking about disappointments, but that's what the Razorbacks are in general right now. But can you make sense?
Are you okay? Are you doing okay, buddy?
No,
just be honest.
I'm not.
No?
I haven't been for a while. I feel like, that big win Razorback football had against Tennessee was such a short-lived thing. And I think that's what Arkansas has been going through. They've had short-lived little wins, but it's been a while, man. It's been a while.
And I'll say this is, and I've said this on my show, is listen, I've been a Cal advocate. I've been a Cal defender. Before the injury, I did start calling like Arkansas. I hate to say this, I started calling them the black cloud of college basketball, not because I think John Calipari is a black cloud or because I think the players are bad people or whatever. To me, it was just as simple as because you know how it is. Every time you talk about them, there's a certain segment of people that, first of all, there's obviously the Arkansas fans that are just bummed and disappointed. That sucks. But then there's the other group of people that's like telling you how they were right and you were wrong and you should have never trusted this guy, whatever. And prior to the injury, and really, I think the LSU game for me, again, was the turning point, was prior to that injury, I did kind of hang my hat on, it's easy to forget this now, but Kentucky last year won 7 of its final 8 games of the regular season, including wins at Tennessee, at Auburn, Alabama at home. I mean, these were great teams last season. And so my whole thing was, it might be pretty in January, but let's get to February with a shot and let's see if we can make a run. So clearly, listen, I was wrong. I'm going to take an L for it. But even as an outsider who doesn't talk about it every single day like you do, although this is obviously probably the biggest story in college basketball, I could feel the weight of it. And so I can't even imagine how you're feeling right now, my man. But just know my thoughts are with you, okay? My thoughts are with all of Razorback Nation.
Yeah. It just seems like that 2021, 2022 year where Arkansas went 9-4 in football and went to the Elite Eight in basketball and went to the World Series in baseball was just eons ago. Not really good vibes right now. But here's the deal, is that there's been some disappointments, obviously, with Razorback basketball. But one of the ones that I think is really tough for anyone to wrap their head around is Nelly Davis, because he's a guy that was the number one transfer portal guy that you got. He averaged 20 points a game last year. He was on Final Four teams. He was the guy. And I would even make the argument that he was probably the one that people were most excited to see here in a Razorback uniform. Boogie Flan's out for the year. We do know that. So maybe this is the time that Nelly Davis step up. What's going on with Nelly Davis? How did he go from a guy that not only was averaging 20, but scoring in a lot of different ways to now he's literally averaging about 5 points a game and shooting pretty awfully. Like, what happened here?
It's just sad. You feel bad for the kid. I mean, and what I would say is, I was excited to see him. I did believe he was one of the better players in the portal. I thought it was smart by Cal to not load up on freshmen, but to find that balance. And it just hasn't clicked. Now, as you said, and I know you guys did a show earlier this week on, trying to look for some positive signs with the injury, and we're never rooting against Boogie Flan. But one thing I did say is, like, Nelly Davis, if you don't have confidence, guess what? Shoot your little freaking heart out, buddy, because just keep shooting, because there's nobody else to take that offensive burden off of you. And so maybe this is the kickstart that he needs. You never want to see an injury. We're not advocating we're not pro-injury here on the Inside Arkansas show here. But I just look at it and I do wonder. I don't know. I don't have a good answer. I mean, I know that the wrist injury to start the preseason got off to a slow start, then was lacking confidence, and we've all played sports, and I do wonder if that could have been a part of it. Is once you start slow, you can't really get going. So I don't have a good answer. Maybe you guys do. You cover it every single day. It's one of the most perplexing things to me. Like, I could have seen a scenario where, hey, Boogie Flan is playing the way that he was prior to the injury. Hey, DJ Wagner, I think, has actually been pretty consistent, all things considered. Somebody's got to take a back seat. So instead of 19 a game, it's 12 a game. Stepping up into the SEC, it's tougher than playing for Florida Atlantic. But I did not see this, man. And again, I wish I had a good answer. I don't. And frankly, just to be honest, like, I feel bad for the kid. I mean, obviously he had big dreams coming to Arkansas and playing in the SEC, and clearly through, about the little under the halfway point of SEC play, he has certainly not only not lived up to, the fans' expectations, but his own expectations. Just feel bad for him.
All right. So I got to ask you about this. We are going to Lexington for the first time. Sure. For this Arkansas-Kentucky game. I don't know if you knew that. Arkansas goes to Kentucky, plays in Rupp. Yeah, apparently that's a game that a lot of people are looking forward to. So that one is going to be, for a lot of reasons, fascinating. Mark Pope and what he's done in Kentucky, they got a solid team, and there's no doubt that they're doing really well, getting to the NCAA tournament, had some nice wins and everything. But the welcoming for John Calipari is going to be something. It's going to be something. So I guess my question to you is, when it comes to storylines, is there a time that you can think of a welcoming back of another coach who's on the opposing team that even comes close? And you can even bring in any sport. But has there ever been a time in any sport where a former coach of one team is now on the other sidelines coaching the other team coming into their home building? Because I would have a hard time believing that there's been a bigger one than this one's going to be happening in Rupp Arena.
Well, Lane Kiffin had a golf ball thrown at him at Tennessee.
Good point.
So until Calipari gets hit, until he has to pull out his 9-iron and protect himself, it's going to be tough to. No, the only one that really does come to mind, and if people don't remember this, go find the videos. When Chris Beard left Texas Tech for Texas and went back the first time, it was vile and it was hostile, because the thing about Cal in Arkansas is, yes, Cal left on his own, but one, I think, first of all, I think there is a percentage of the Kentucky fan base that's just appreciative of what he did. I think there's certainly a fan base that, because he's struggling, is, they won't say it publicly, but is sympathetic. They wanted him to come back with a top 10 team to beat him in Rupp Arena and prove that they got the right guy. That's clearly not going to happen. Chris Beard, though, was the only one that comes, because, I mean, they were shaking the bus, and you talk to people who were there that night, they said, like, the players looked scared, Chris Beard looked scared, because that was, and the Southwest and the old Southwest Conference rivalry is better than I do, but obviously for a coach to leave Texas Tech for Texas, it's a little bit different, and it wasn't like any percentage of the Texas Tech fan base wanted Chris Beard to leave. It wasn't like Cal, where some of the fan base was kind of over it. They wanted him to stay, and they wanted him to retire there. And I can tell you, because I remember, like, a week before that thing happened, they were convinced he wasn't leaving. Oh, we're building this facility, and he loves it here in Lubbock, and blah, 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 and this and that. And then he left because it's his alma mater, and he's certainly allowed to. But that was really hostile and angry. This one, I think, is going to be very hostile. I don't know like that there's going to be a lot of anger because again, just because of frankly the way that Arkansas is playing. If they were, whatever, they're going to be 18 games into the season and they're 16-2 and they're ranked ninth in the country and all those guys that Cal brought are playing at the top of their level, I think it'd be a different deal. I still think it's going to be hostile. I'm jealous that I can't be there. I was going to try to make it myself and I was unable to just with some travel stuff. But I do think it's going to be hostile. But I think because Arkansas is struggling, and I think the other thing too, I'll say this, and I don't know if you've gotten this vibe, John. I think a lot of the Kentucky fans, I don't want to say they miss the former players, but like I think there's a degree and a level of respect for DJ Wagner, Adu Thiero, and Big Z where there's no anger. There's no like DJ Wagner stabbed us in the back. It's like, no, we know you've been Cal's guy since the day you came out of the womb. We understand why you left. We miss you. We wish we had you as a part of what we're doing. So I think it's going to be an interesting vibe to say the least, and I think most of the vitriol will certainly be aimed towards Cal. Like I said, I'm jealous that I can't be there, man. That was one when the SEC schedule came out. I thought for sure I'd be able to make it. I haven't been back to Rupp Arena in about 5 or 6 years, and I was hoping to get to that one, but unfortunately, I will not be able to.
Well,
so you'll have to post a lot of good pictures and videos and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be sure to. Well, if it needs to be, I may hire you as security because I think I'm going to probably need some when I'm getting there. Because it's been wild. It's been wild hanging out and talking with Big Blue.
Have you got any interesting DMs like you better not show up?
Oh, you literally have no idea. Like I've gotten 2 death threats. It's been pretty wild.
Really?
Mm-hmm. 2 death threats. Former baseball players just saying pretty awful things.
Former Kentucky baseball players?
Yeah. Yeah, you're just Kentucky fans. I've gotten some people that have attacked every bit of my physical appearance and everything. So yeah, it's been pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to that, being there in Lexington, going into the enemy territory.
Most Kentucky fans are very, very, very nice people, and I think I will say I think the other thing that is becoming clear is what I said all offseason. I never understood this argument of like, why are you mad at Cal? You wanted him gone. He found another job so that saved you 30 or 40 million in buyout money. And I think a lot of Kentucky fans are starting to realize, independent of how the Arkansas is playing, he actually did us a solid by leaving under the circumstances that he did. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to say at least.
Yeah.
So
I just think a lot of people just want to be right and justified in the way they felt, and maybe this is the way to do it. But should be interesting to see how the rest of the season goes. Who knows? Maybe Arkansas can finally start winning some SEC games. We'll have to wait and see. But we always love catching up with Aaron Torres. It's Aaron Torres of the Aaron Torres Podcast. You can follow him on social media and on Twitter at Aaron_Torres. But AT, hopefully you enjoy the rest of the basketball season. I know that we sure will. And hopefully Arkansas has some positivity going their way heading into the end of the season. I'm just trying to make stuff up, so I'm trying to make it work. But either way,
one thing I will say, as somebody who's followed Cal's career, even during the years where they've struggled, this is around the time where, one, he usually pulls out a big road win that nobody's expecting. Last year was at Auburn. And his teams do, in the regular season, because Kentucky fans will always correct you on their recent NCAA tournament success, but in the regular season, in general, his teams do play pretty well in February. So I'm hoping just for, I don't want to see anybody's team struggle. I'm hoping that there's at least any sort of positivity here over the next 5 or 6 weeks towards the back end of the season.
Guess we'll find out here soon. Aaron Torres of the Aaron Torres Podcast. Appreciate you, buddy. We'll be catching up with you here soon, man. All right?
All right, my man. Have a great afternoon. Travel safe. Be safe. And hopefully we talk again. I mean, it sounds like it, it's not guaranteed, but I certainly hope we talk again soon.
We will be. Trust me. We will be. There'll be plenty of stuff to discuss. So, but stay safe out there, my man.
Thank you, sir.